Welcome to Plot Twist, your place for quick summaries of movies with jaw-dropping twists. Let's dive in. The movie begins with a 20-year-old boy named J.R. who is being taken to prison in a transport vehicle. From the looks and behavior of the prisoners towards him even before arriving at the prison, it becomes evident that this is a very dangerous place. J.R. eventually arrives at the prison, changes into the prison uniform, and hands over his belongings. When asked for a family member's phone number, he replies that he has no one outside. He is placed in a cell with a weak and defeated cellmate. J.R. notices this, but doesn't engage in conversation. The next day, J.R. shaves his head and starts his prison work. Despite being sentenced to only 6 months, J.R. feels scared and sad. He notices a man named Brendan, whom he seems to recognize. J.R. keeps staring at him, and it becomes clear that Brendan is a significant figure in the prison. After finishing his work, J.R. continues to observe Brendan. Suddenly, 3 intimidating prisoners take his cellmate away. The cellmate is visibly terrified but doesn't resist, as he is too weak to do anything. Later, someone approaches Brendan with a strange note containing chess moves. J.R. intervenes, pointing out that Brendan's move is incorrect and that he would lose in 3 moves. Brendan mocks him but challenges him to prove it. J.R. demonstrates the moves and wins, shocking Brendan. Brendan then questions J.R. about who he is and why he acts so reserved. J.R. responds by saying that in this place, no one is anyone, and it's best to stay out of others' business. Later, J.R. notices his cellmate trying to craft a weapon for self-defense. J.R. advises against it, warning that the group is too large for him to handle. However, the cellmate insists he has no other choice and continues his plan. The next day, J.R. observes from a distance as the 3 prisoners confront his cellmate. Before they can attack, J.R. intervenes by pushing his cellmate and telling him to fight back. A brawl ensues between J.R. and the cellmate, drawing the guards' attention. Both are placed in solitary confinement, which was J.R.'s plan to protect his cellmate. However, his plan fails when Brendan confronts him after his release, warning him to stay out of others' affairs. Later, the 3 prisoners assault J.R.'s cellmate in a public area, sending a clear message to J.R. to mind his own business. That night, J.R. wakes to find his cellmate attempting to end his life. J.R. calls for emergency help, but it's too late to save him. As a routine procedure, J.R. is initially suspected, but is released after investigation. One of the 3 prisoners later warns J.R. that he is next. Realizing the danger, J.R. prepares a weapon for self-defense. Before any confrontation, Brendan intervenes, pulls J.R. aside, and gives him advice based on a chess strategy. Only engage in battles you are certain to win. Brendan points out that J.R.'s toothbrush weapon is insufficient, and that even if he defeats the 3, their allies would retaliate. Brendan offers to protect J.R. in exchange for J.R. helping him escape prison, as Brendan is serving a 20-year sentence. If J.R. refuses, Brendan threatens to leave him to his fate. The next day, the 3 prisoners corner J.R. in a bathroom and attempt to assault him. Brendan's men intervene, rescuing J.R. To avoid suspicion, Brendan ensures J.R.'s sentence remains unchanged. Brendan's men later eliminate the leader of the hostile group by throwing him from a high place. Brendan advises J.R. to stay out of trouble. After 6 months, J.R. is released from prison. To repay Brendan's help, J.R. goes to meet a man named Sam, who is the leader of a gang. Sam tests J.R.'s chess skills, asking him for the next move in a setup. J.R. impresses Sam by pointing out a trap and suggesting the correct moves. Sam, impressed, gives J.R. a mysterious bag in a beachfront apartment. And you keep asking him about the bathroom, and he thinks she's there for him. So he starts tidying up the place from the mess and prepares something for both of them to drink because he likes the girl. But the girl gives him a small bag and says that it contains money, a car key, and a phone. She tells him that these are all the things he will need in the coming period. And when he asks her what he's supposed to do with these things, she tells him to charge the phone well because someone will call him on it and tell him what to do. The next day, they indeed call him, and he goes to meet a very strange person in the city. He talks about this person at the time, saying he's associated with Sam. This man takes him to a weapons operation level and starts introducing him to the weapons available and the ones he will be using. J.R. is very impressed and shocked by the things he's seeing. Afterward, the man takes him outside and teaches him how to use these weapons, and J.R. actually learns everything about them. He then goes to sleep and wakes up to a phone call telling him that he will execute the mission now and that he needs to prepare. J.R. indeed prepares his stuff, readies the weapons he has, and heads to the location they gave him. He boards a helicopter, and as soon as it takes off, he pulls out a weapon, points it at the pilot, and hands him a paper, telling him to head to the location written on it. He also threatens him, saying if he doesn't comply, he will finish him off. At the same time, we see Brendan preparing himself. He takes a sharp tool hidden in his book and gives it to his assistant. After that, he signals someone in the area and starts fighting with another person in the cell, causing chaos. The police intervene, and at that moment, Brendan's assistant holds an officer at knife point, threatening to kill him if they don't open the cell door. They comply and open the door, and Brendan escapes, waiting for his helicopter. The helicopter lands, and Brendan grabs a machine gun, starts shooting at the guards, and boards the helicopter. He then takes a weapon and begins shooting at the guards to secure the way for his companions to board the helicopter with him. They land at a pre-arranged location, get into a car, and leave immediately. One of Brendan's men goes to get food, and while they're eating, they hear their names mentioned on the radio, along with details of their escape and crimes. They discover that one of their companions had lied to them, claiming he was imprisoned for a minor armed case. In reality, he was involved in the assault of a 10-year-old girl at a school. Brendan gets furious because of the lie, beats him up, and tells him he's free now, but warns him not to talk about any of them, or they'll deal with him in his cell. Brendan and his men then leave to meet with Sam. Sam talks to Brendan about a gold heist, mentioning that gold prices have risen significantly since Brendan went to prison. He adds that they've started sourcing gold from other places besides Africa. Brendan suggests waiting a bit since they just escaped from prison, but Sam insists this operation is different and very significant. He explains that they'll be dealing directly with the factory this time, not just any supplier. He reveals that the factory holds $9 million worth of gold and assures Brendan that the operation is easy and the buyer is ready. Brendan gets excited about the amount and agrees to the operation. Sam throws a party to celebrate the new operation and Brendan's release from prison. At the party, JR notices a girl named Tasha and becomes very interested in her. He follows her and tries to talk to her, eventually inviting her out to eat together. However, a man named Josh intervenes, talks to Tasha, and tells her she shouldn't be talking to JR. This angers JR, leading to a fight where Josh throws JR into the water. It's revealed that JR doesn't know how to swim and has a fear of water. Tasha immediately jumps in to save him. After getting out of the water, JR tries to confront Josh, but Brendan stops him. Feeling upset, JR leaves the place. Tasha follows him in her car, picks him up, opens the sunroof, and drives at a crazy speed, telling him, "This is how you let loose." She then takes him to a restaurant, as he wanted. From his expressions, it's clear he likes her and wants to ask her many questions, but doesn't know how to start. Tasha tells him she knows what he wants to ask and mentions that she heard about the escape. JR is surprised and asks her why she stays close to Sam. She explains that Sam is like the jacket he's wearing. While wearing it, you think people see you as stylish, but it doesn't actually suit you. JR asks her how she got involved with the gang in the first place. She explains that they advertised an online job for recent graduates, offering an attractive salary and a visa to Italy. She applied along with many others, and they took their passports. Since then, none of them have been able to get their passports back, and they've been trapped there. JR points out that she lives in a luxurious place, drives an expensive car, and must have enough money to escape. She replies that the last person who tried to escape was burned in the kitchen she worked in. JR becomes very frightened, realizing the situation is far more serious than he imagined. He ends the conversation and goes straight home. The next day, Brendan talks to JR, asking how his night went. JR is surprised by the question and doesn't know how to respond. Brendan asks him more seriously, and JR replies that they just ate and didn't do anything. Brendan advises him, saying it's good they didn't do anything, because if they had, Sam's sharks would have eaten him alive. Brendan gets angry and tells JR to think carefully and follow the rules because any mistake could endanger all their lives. He tells JR to forget about the girl and get out of the game entirely. Later, Sam informs them that he got them a new apartment to prepare for the operation. They go to the new apartment to start planning, and they start moving with their Arabic to the place where the gold factory is. They talk to set a plan for this matter. Brendan speaks with JR, telling him that he will be their ground in this operation. When they ask what ground means, they explain that he will enter through the air conditioning ducts, and as soon as he sees them aiming for the gold, he will come down on them, immobilize them, and prevent them from moving. Using the weapon he has, he will take the person with the keys and make him open the door for them. They say they will be waiting near the door and will take over the operation afterward. Then they go to a racetrack to find a driver for this operation. He gathers the whole gang in one place to explain each person's role in the operation. Brendan tells JR and Sterling that they will stand guard over the gold. Josh at that moment speaks up and says that he is supposed to guard the gold. When Sam asks him if there's any reason he can't do that, he replies that there is, and that this operation belongs to him. At that moment, Sam tells him he will give up part of his share if he lets him guard the gold. Of course, Josh agrees because he wants to ensure the operation's success. Brendan then agrees to the arrangement, and Josh starts annoying JR, telling him not to act so superior. They get into a fight, and it becomes clear that they can't stand each other. JR leaves the place afterward to go meet Tasha. We find out that Tasha works in a bar, and someone is trying to get close to her. Naturally, JR gets jealous, gets angry at them, and pulls out his weapon. Of course, everyone gets scared of him and runs away. Tasha gets upset with him for his behavior and tells him that what he did was wrong. She says that if they go to the police now, they will be in big trouble. JR tells her that he knows it was wrong, but didn't know how else to act. He apologizes to her and says he wants to go have a drink with her. Tasha stays silent for a while, then asks him if he lives near the sea. When he says yes, she tells him they will meet after 8 o'clock. JR agrees and goes to the sea at 8. He finds her there, and she is in the water. Naturally, he is scared because he has a fear of water, but she calls him, insisting he joins her. JR takes off his clothes and enters the water with Tasha. She asks him if he has a family, and he says he does, but doesn't know anything about them. He says the last time he saw his father left a scar on his face. Tasha tells him that his father should have taught him how to swim. He says his father tried to teach him once, but threw him into the water, which almost ended his life. He says it was because his father was jealous and actually stopped. When she asks him how he felt at that moment, moment, he says it was a very comforting feeling. The next day, when JR asks her about the necklace she is wearing, she tells him it's a lucky charm. She says it hasn't worked for her yet. Then she takes off the necklace, puts it on him, and tells him it might work for him. JR then talks to her and tells her they are going to run away. He says he will carry out the gold operation, take his share, and run away with her. He tells her to prepare her bags and leaves the place to go to the operation. When he arrives, Brendan gets into a fight with him for being late. JR apologizes, and then they all head to the operation together. They arrive at the location of the operation, and JR enters through the duct. They start shutting down all the cameras in the place. They make sure JR reaches his designated position. Meanwhile, we see Tasha returning to Sam. Sam talks to Tasha and asks her what JR told her. She says, as expected, that he told her they would take the gold and run away together. He asks her if they got close, and she says no, adding that she told him they couldn't do that because it was too dangerous. Sam says he is pleased with her and leaves. The scene shifts back to the operation, where they are waiting until morning for the workers to arrive. They all enter the factory, pretending to be workers. They approach the man monitoring the cameras, claiming they are there to fix the cameras that malfunctioned yesterday. At that moment, they yell at the camera operator, take all the recordings from the previous day, and communicate with JR, telling him to move. JR executes the plan, descends to the area where the gold is located, and holds everyone at gunpoint, taking control of the situation. Everything goes smoothly, and he opens the door for the gang. Brendan changes the plan and tells Josh that he will not stay with the gold. Josh gets angry and upset, shooting one of the workers. Brendan gets angry at him, hits him, takes his weapon, and empties it of ammunition. He tells Stan that if Josh shoots anyone else, he should take him out immediately. They continue their mission, melting the gold to take it with them. At that moment, the driver calls them, saying the police have arrived. Brendan tells them to execute Plan B. After melting the gold, they quickly leave with the hostages, pretending to be hostages themselves. Suddenly, they draw their weapons and engage in a shootout with the police. The driver immediately drives into the scene with car, and they all get in and escape. Unfortunately, due to the intense gunfire, a bullet hits Sterling in the stomach. The police chase them in cars, and suddenly another police car appears in front of them, but Brendan gets out and takes out the people in that car. The driver, using his skills, manages to get rid of the two cars chasing them. They drive their car into a large truck, successfully escaping the situation. The truck takes them to Sam. Sam is very upset and angry with them because all the news is talking about them. Brendan tells him that the entire fault lies with Josh because he fired the gun, and people outside heard the gunfire and alerted the police. He tells him that because of Josh's reckless behavior, Sterling's life is over. Sam then checks on the gold and asks how many pieces they got. When Brendan tells him they got 6 pieces, Sam is very happy, and she escapes the place immediately and sends a message to JR, telling him not to go home because Sam is after him too. JR then tells Brendan about the situation and advises him not to go home. When they check the house, they realize Sam has set a trap and the police are there. Brendan immediately calls Sam and asks him why he's doing this. Sam pretends not to know who's calling, but Brendan knows what's going on, hangs up, and throws the phone away. Sam gets very scared and talks to his men, telling them to monitor the streets and stay ready. Brendan takes JR to a grave in the city, retrieves money from it, and says it's enough to take back what's theirs. Meanwhile, a message appears on Tasha's phone about a train departing at 8 o'clock. When she arrives at the train, JR is already waiting for her there. Tasha, JR, and Brendan head to Melbourne, where they meet someone who tells them where Sam plans to sell the gold. While they're at the house, Tasha calls them to watch the news, which reports they've already taken $10 million. Brendan laughs because the actual amount is much less. He asks Tasha to go get food, but she refuses and tells him to go himself. Brendan gets angry and hits Tasha, leading JR to confront him. However, Brendan overpowers JR, and Tasha eventually goes to get the food. Brendan later talks to JR about how he's seen many types of monkeys. Some fight to survive, while others fight for pleasure. He warns JR that monkeys who fight for pleasure are nearly extinct and tells him to choose his side carefully. He advises JR not to let his foolish actions ruin the lives of good people like himself. Later, we see Tasha leaving the store, with someone following her. Back with Brendan and JR, Brendan warns JR not to fall in love with Tasha, as it would make him vulnerable and easy to track. He offers JR money to leave her, but Tasha overhears the conversation. JR takes the money but doesn't reveal what he plans to do. When Tasha hears this, she runs away, and JR chases after her to tell her he truly loves her and is worried about her safety. He gives her the money and advises her to leave because things are too dangerous. The man following Tasha later approaches Brendan, points a gun at him, and says his time is up. A message from Sam. Brendan talks to the man, asking how much he was paid to kill him. He offers the man a bigger share of the $4 million worth of gold he has with Sam if he spares him. The man considers the offer. Meanwhile, JR sends a message to Tasha, assuring her things aren't as they seem and everything will be okay. He returns home and sleeps, only to wake up surprised to find Brendan in front of him, jokingly blaming him for everything. Brendan gives JR a gun as a gift. The next day, they head to the location where the deal is supposed to happen. Brendan crashes into Sam's car, gets out, and fights Sam's men, eliminating them one by one. Afterward, they search for the gold. JR notices Josh handing over a key and realizes Josh is still alive. They take Josh with them to find out the gold's location. When Josh refuses to talk, they threaten him, suggesting they'll torture him silently by putting him in a freezer. Brendan likes the idea, strips Josh of his clothes, and locks him in the freezer. Eventually, Josh reveals the gold's location out of fear. When they arrive, they find the gold. Sam is surprised to see his chest. King Peace moved and finds Brendan behind him with a gun. Brendan admits to knocking over the king and accuses Sam of being emotionless. Sam argues there's no room for emotions in business and tries to pull his gun, but Brendan shoots him first. Brendan and JR then go to a hotel, hiding the gold under the bed. Later, JR speaks to the receptionist and leaves an envelope labeled 43. Brendan grows suspicious of JR, watching him closely as he sleeps and moves around. The next day, Brendan tells JR it's time to leave. They take their belongings and head to the boat. Brendan points a gun at JR, offering him $350,000 to walk away. If JR refuses, Brendan threatens to kill him. JR responds, pointing out that half of $4 million is $2 million. So you were exploiting me, with money actually. And JR says that you were indeed using me, and Natasha was right. And Brendan says that I'm not using you, and that I'm offering you $350,000 in full. At that moment, JR speaks to him coldly, saying that you don't even have that amount of money right now. Brendan is shocked at that moment and quickly goes to the bags to check on the gold. He discovers that there's no gold, and iron bars were placed instead. When he goes to ask him about the location of his gold, he finds Natasha answering the phone. Natasha responds at that moment, saying, "Checkmate." It turns out that everything that happened was part of a plan, and room 43 was actually the room where the gold was. Natasha managed to reach the room, take the gold, and replace it with iron. Brendan gets very angry at that moment and throws JR into the water. When he remembers that he can't swim and that his life might end, he pulls him out again. This is, of course, because without him, he wouldn't be able to find his gold. When JR regains consciousness, he speaks with Brendan, telling him to keep his phone with him and that he'll give him his gold. Later, we see Brendan washing his hands and noticing at that moment that the entire hotel is empty and that there's no one in the place. He realizes that his news has reached here and that the woman sitting behind him actually had a magazine with his news in it. He notices at that moment that the entire hotel is empty and that there's no one in the place, and he realizes that his news has reached here and that the woman sitting behind him actually had a magazine with his news in it, and that the police were able to find him and that it's over. He leaves the place with his hands raised, and indeed, they arrest him. At the same time, we see JR and Natasha heading to the grave where he had hidden the money and placed his gold bars. He sends him a message to the prison, and in that message, he tells him the location of his gold and tells him that he must respect contracts. He tells him that a woman must support a man and sends him a picture of Natasha, who is pregnant. Brendan feels at that moment that his rights weren't taken away, and knowing that the gold is safe makes him happy. The movie ends there. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. If you did, make sure to subscribe for more awesome content. Thanks for watching.